Hello, everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of April the 8th till 14th, 2024. Now, what a week it is going to be. Now, I am not saying that for absolutely everyone, karma is straight away next week knocking on the door. Important, life altering, life changing, life upgrading events are happening. Of course, these many times come hand in hand with certain closures and terminations as well. So keep this in mind. However, the feeling of it, the feeling of intensity, and also the feeling of a certain kind of stillness, like a deadly silence almost, in other areas of life are gonna mark this week in a very memorable way for all of us. Now, of course, the highlight of the week, the superstar of the astrological show, not just for next week, but it can very well be for the year, at least one of them, is of course the total solar eclipse taking place on the 8th of April in the sign of Aries. So Monday, that is gonna be almost like the bass tune, like striking a pitching fork. That's gonna give the tonality without a doubt for the rest of the week. But I would also like to say certainly for the rest of the month, even though this month, April, has still another major and really, really impactful celestial conversation, another conjunction. And of course, I'm speaking about the Jupiter Uranus conjunction on the 20th of April. That is gonna feel like, being launched by a catapult in a certain way in one area of our lives at least. But that is gonna break a cycle of stagnation, let's say. However, still, that Jupiter and Uranus conjunction is basically in the next sign where the eclipse took place. So for some people, that can represent the very same area of life, or for other people, the neighboring one, let's say, because one area of life is a gateway to the other, and so on. All of the houses have a strong connection to one another, not just in an aspect sense, but their succession. It has a logic, it has a sense. So yes, for either one area of life or maybe two areas of life, but it's gonna be, strongly emphasized and highlighted, meaning that the rest are either silent or they suffer the consequences passively of the other area. And astrologically speaking, I'm of course talking about the opposite signs. For example, Libra, where the south node is, the opposite sign to the eclipse, and Scorpio, the opposite sign to Taurus. Scorpio, a very, very transformative energy. There isn't a lot in the sky, astrologically speaking, at least nothing major and relevant in Scorpio. Let's say maybe Haumea, planetoid dwarf planet Haumea, which brings the quantum, which brings the magic, which brings the creational energy, and Scorpio, the change, the transformation. So, of course, whatever the Uranus Jupiter conjunction brings on is going to be deeply transformative, hence the symbolism of Scorpio. And whatever fated beginning, birth, uh, initiation, big step in life, or maybe big realization, big idea, epiphany, thought, whatever the eclipse might bring in Aries, well, that changes or activates or in any way reconfigures the self, what we think about the self, even Mercury retrograde hanging around the eclipse zone. It's not conjunct in a very tight way, but it's near, it's hanging around there. And as it goes retrograde, Mercury is already, of course, retrograde at the beginning of the week, but it will activate that eclipse point. So will Venus, not next week, but it is coming. So this eclipse is going to be emphasized much more even after it takes place. So what I actually want to say is that the karmic elements may take place over a period of time. For example, the classic time frame that is used in astrology, 6 months from the moment of the eclipse or new moon, and especially because it's a solar eclipse, so it's a new moon. But it can take place at any given moment in that time frame, and usually signs of it, hints of it, feelings, something of it is given as a glimpse at the moment of the eclipse. On, for example, the day of the eclipse plus 1 or 2, let's say, before and after. But the signs are going to be there. But of course, because this is Aries energy, quick, the now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, now. It can very well be, no, quite closely to the moment of the eclipse, while for other people, it has already, in a way, taken place symbolically. Because sometimes an eclipse unleashes, let's say, its effect, its symbolism in someone's life a week, 2 weeks before, because everything is like a domino, like a, let's say, like a puzzle. It is built on one another. It's like a chain of events very many times. So yes, these events are setting up the expression of the eclipse in our lives individually and collectively, of course. So this is how we begin the week. I'm not going to speak in great depth about the solar eclipse because I have a separate video about it. Check it out if you're guided. But certain key themes must be mentioned. One of the key themes is, of course, Chiron, because the eclipse is conjunct to the minute, not just to the degree, to the minute with Chiron. So this is almost like the universe, the divine is emphasizing the healing factor, the wound factor, the healing factor, understanding it, Mercury, and what we do with it, where it guides us next. May it be a healing journey to close the wound, or may it be an alchemical journey to do something, achieve something with the power of the wound. Now, I know that this is going to sound a little bit, extreme, but Aries energy is primal, instinctual. Wild animals, especially strong predators, bear, lion, I don't know, any other rhino, any other strong predatory aggressive animal is very powerful, normally speaking, but it is extra strong, lethal, deadly, precise, and unpredictable when wounded. Now, that may not be the best possible state because it's uncomfortable, it is where you're being, but of course, let's not understand it literally, but symbolically, karmically, the energy of a period, what you're going through psychologically in a period symbolically. All of us are in life, all of us have moments, cycles, days, weeks, even years when we are that wounded animal. And many times that wounded animal displays as depression, a vengeful depression, because the inner power, the rage, the strength, the amplification of the strength given by the wound, by the pain of the wound, by the discomfort of the wound, and the rage of receiving it. That is power, fire, Aries. And that fire many times will consume the self, hence the depression. Unexpressed rage, something that we cannot project, or this is the way we project it by isolating, but that is very much part of this Sometimes the depression is the rage of the wound. And this is why the dark night of the soul many times cannot be without that depressive episode, because the wound has to enrage us, and that strength, the power, the fire of the rage, yes, it does burn us, but it also moves something in ether, in karma, in a fated, in an alchemical way. Because when it's a healing journey, it's clear, it's cauterizing the wound. That depression has to burn out some. We have to come to terms with a new state of being. Let's say it like that. But healing on its own doesn't modify the great outlines of one's path. If you want to modify it, well, then there is a certain alchemy at play. So that is beyond healing. That is many times having to be wounded. I don't want to necessarily say on purpose, but in a way still on purpose, because the soul not just attracts it, as in not just accepts it, but attracts it, because it needs a power source that it cannot get in any other way. So hence a really bad relationship, or any kind of partnership, connection, contract, whatever, friendship, which shocks your being, and it kind of pushes you in a state where you would have never ever gone to on your own, or under normal circumstances. Many times these events in life, as dramatic, painful, I don't even know which words to use. You get the pic. Dark Night of the Soul specific words here. As bad as they are, many times those are the most valuable tools for us to take a step which we could have not otherwise. And we come in this incarnation with a certain, let's say, plan. Big, highlights, the bigger highlights of how our journey here has to look like, and the big picture. But there are certain options, choices, preferences, where we have to fill in the gaps to whatever we left empty at the moment of incarnation, for where our destiny, our soul, etc., to take us, exactly because we wanted to work with what we have in that present moment, and in the present be the moment when the soul is immersed in life. That's unforeseeable because it depends on so very many things, hence it left the page blank, and that needs to be filled in by us. And if we want to write something there which is a much more elevated, or let's say a totally different chapter than we, as I said, came here with, the big highlights, then we do have to make such a radical move in life. Of course, we consciously don't know this. As I said, we are immersed in the story. There's no way we can foresee it, but the soul kind of knows and accepts and uses this as a tool. So, long story short, I'm so sorry for this very long side note, but this can very well, all of this can very well be the element of the eclipse, what the wound does, Chiron. And because Mercury is so close, and because Mercury this week conjuncts the sun, and then after it will activate the eclipse point, there is a lot of understanding here. Processing, understanding, and doing something with it. With the understanding, of course. Doing something with the knowledge, doing something with the clarity, and with the awareness. And chances are, because, this Jupiter and Uranus conjunction, We can say that it does hold a semi-sextile with the eclipse. It's not perfect. No, it's barely called, but that might be built on this healing as well, not directly, not in a very noticeable way, but maybe a much more elevated state of being is a requirement for the upgrade. Because regardless of how it plays out, and of course I'm speaking about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, it is still an upgrade. It is still moving us forward, like even if it's like a natural calamity, let's say, because it's very possible and even probable. And as I said, they're already conjunct. So the floods in Australia, the earthquake in Taiwan, earthquake in the United States, landslides, all of it, it's already happening. But from a um, geological perspective, it's in a way a change and upgrade. It's Mother Earth's own inner mechanism, if inner mobility, she's adapting. So it's an upgrade, really. We're just in the way. So in any way, shape, and form, even if it comes as a calamity, it is still an upgrade and a futuristic energy. And Jupiter, the justice factor. Now, what is justice in a calamity, you might say? Well, everything has to respect the divine design. You know, the time frame before the calamity, when everything was allowed, was one state. After the calamity, after the divine design, because that's also Jupiter. You know, Jupiter is the highest knowledge, highest understanding, belief, faith. That's the divine. That's basically the divine design. That's how the ink of it. You know, the ink and paper. So if a landscape has to look a certain way, because you can imagine animals have to play out their own very unique destinies, their own, roles and purposes, the land, interior, within the earth, externally, anything, everything. So it will have to respect ultimately that's the moment of justice. When time is up, it's there. It has to adapt to the divine design. So even in the bad, even in the calamity, it's still an upgrade. It's still how it is meant to be. And that energy, as I said, is already at the very beginning of the week starting to play out. But the good news is that after the aftermath of the eclipse are over, not next week certainly, but in a month, 2, 3, maybe, depending, of course, on our own unique situations, then until autumn, we have a period of like a rest, let's say, even though it's not gonna feel like a rest, because you can imagine there are still a lot of important celestial conversations to take place in the second half of the year. But from a certain perspective, there might be a respite from the deeply karmic element until it begins again, in the autumn series of eclipses. But those eclipses, maybe except the new moon in Libra, so the lunar eclipse in Libra, are not as, how should I say, dramatic, are not as stark in their expression. They do leave us a bit of, adaptation time, and they don't come crashing down as a comet. Let's say it like that. So that's the good news, that we are facing the second eclipse, and after it, settles down, we'll have some time of respite, so to speak. So let's move on to the 9th, where an important celestial conversation is Mercury retrograde conjunct Aries. This is the second conjunction with Aries. So this is a very, very rebellious energy. Of course, Sun conjunct Chiron, eclipse conjunct Chiron. That has a rebellious quality to it as well, because it's Aries, sovereignty, the North Node in Aries. My rights, my voice, my life, my survival, and the instincts and all of that. So this is where we can expect a lot of heated conversations, contradictory conversations, Aries. But this isn't necessarily a new energy. This is where this is a moment when it gets really, really, really intense. And social media and everything that has to do with it. And also, at the moment of this Mercury-Aries conjunction, Mars and Saturn are very, very close to each other. And Saturn is the limitation principle, when Mars is the ruler of both the eclipse and Mercury retrograde and Mercury conjunct Aries. So this may represent banning Saturn. So for moral or religious considerations, Pisces, social media in certain places in the world, or a very good attempt to this, and this will cause uprising and protest. So there is going to be a lot of heated discussions in this sense, without a shadow of a doubt. But this can also play out in our personal lives as well. We can expect ourselves and everyone around us, and the Mercury retrograde typical themes, to be really, really on. Irritability, a very irrational type of approach to feelings, emotions, what other people express, not too much patience, stress, everyone wants something, everyone is selfish, etc., etc. So this will cause conflicts, fights, battles, and protests out there in the world. And I'm so sorry to say this, but these can be quite violent. Moon energetic in the sign of Aries, the feeling are on fire, boiling. And afterwards, the next day, let's say, Moon is in Taurus, getting close to Jupiter, Uranus, the same thing. But in Taurus is fictional ruler is Vulcanus, volcano, when something just boils within the earth, the moon, our feelings are going to boil deep within us. And then Jupiter expands this, Uranus erupts this. So there is going to be a lot of feelings and also words, communication, and all of it. So, and we reached the 10th, and this is very important for the other great highlight of the week, but also this, we can put this in the year category. Even though this is not a very rare celestial conversation, it happens every 2 years or so, where Mars meets Saturn in the sky, but still, with the eclipse energy and Mars being the ruler of the eclipse, it's special. It is, in this sense, it's rare. And this energy is not all that straightforward, because it's Pisces and Piscean. And Pisces is that which is permanently susceptible to interpretation. Pisces is where there is no Saturnian truth, but Saturn is in Pisces. So that means that both Saturn and Pisces have to surrender a little bit to each other. where Pisces says, I'm not susceptible to fixity in any way, shape, and form. But with Saturn in here, well, I'll accept a good attempt. While Saturn, this is where it's Pisces. So however Pisces crystallizes as subjective, as ethereal, as non-real as it may be, well, it has to be good enough because it's Pisces after all. Mars is the activator. It puts everything on fire. It is the combustion. It combusts Saturn. So you can imagine that this is where it's a reality check, but a reality check which has a strong action attached to it. Let us do something for real. Now, this can be bad and good. So this favors, let's say, both the criminal and also the hero, or this is both light and dark. It is really, really up to how we take it. Because these two planets, Saturn and Mars, according to the ancient word, the malefics. So some chaos, something challenging, something not that pretty, or especially in the sign of Pisces, something tempting, something which has a strong duality to it. If it's good, it has a big price. You know, the temptation factor. It always has this to it, but at the same time, it is compassion. It is the Christ consciousness. It is the divine spirit. It is where dreams are created. Hope is eternal, infinite. Hope is where it self-generates by its very nature. It is almost undying. So you see the two dichotomies. You see the two opposites. We really, really need to embrace this energy and of course turn it into to its higher expression. Because those people who are ill-willed, I'm not judging, are definitely gonna embrace this energy for their own purposes. Because as I said, Mars and Saturn, something is actually done. It's action time. If this wouldn't be in Pisces, this would be a strong militaristic energy. So the fact that it's in Pisces and Pisces drowns a bit both Saturn and Mars, neither planets are all that fantastic in the sign of Pisces. This is actually a good sign. This is actually positive because the aggression, as I said, militaristic energy in this way can only be either psychological, indirect, incitation, manipulation, whatever. It cannot be that. Imagine if this celestial conversation happened in Aries. I know that it don't need to happen in Aries. It, as in what I meant is, we can almost consider that part of it happened in Aries, because Mars is the ruler of the eclipse. This transiting North Node, now Venus, everything that is in Aries right now. So, you know what I mean. It's the aggression is on. But imagine if Mars wouldn't be in the non-confrontational sign of Pisces. It would be in a heavily confrontational sign. I don't know, like Leo or Aries or Gemini. That would be really, really bad under the present circumstances. Not, in a typical way, because that may be a strong motivation. But when everything else is on fire and there is conflict, a lot of, the dark side of Pisces, hatred, deep hatred in the air, we don't need that. So there is also saving grace to this energy that it can only play out indirectly. This is where it's not the fire, but it's the gasoline, liquid fuel. That's so Pisces. And actually, I reminded of myself of this it can very well play out as something happening with liquid fuel, Saturn, with fossils, fossil fuel, Mars combustion. This may also represent great archaeological discoveries where they are on Earth. But this can also represent, and let's focus on this, compassion. Enough is enough of something that is against the principle of compassion, humanity, humanitarianism, uh, unconditional love, morality of the strongest kind, spirituality, divine laws. So, because Saturn is also the great karmic lord, and Mars, the police. If something is against everything that is sacred, enough is enough. This is when the line is drawn. But this energy is where let's not just speak about compassion, let's do something. So, as I said, this can be really, really positive. And anything that has to do with healing, especially psychological healing, um, anything that has to do with alchemy, magic, psychoanalysis, the exploration of the self, even arts. This energy, as I said, gives shape and form to something. So this is where you have a tool to do something that lasts or that produces effect. Even though that effect cannot be all that material, you heal a trauma, for example, or you alchemize something. But the fact that it produces an effect, that's the reality factor, and that is highlighted right now. It's not all that comfortable, especially that Mars very soon holds a semi-sextile with the North Node in its home sign of Aries. That's not comfortable energy. That's where it's hard. Saturn, the sacrifice, or whatever it is that you need to do to push through, it's hard, but it's worth it. You know what I mean? Whatever I say, it's not an easy energy, but it's so worth it. And a part of it is, as I said, Pisces, surrender. Another part of it is the opposite of surrender, initiation, Aries, the fight, the struggle. Let's do it. Let's be immersed in it. Let's not detach. And the other side of it, as I said, the opposite, Pisces energy. Let's be detached. So it's not a walk in the park, but it can really, really produce effect. And even on the world stage, enough is enough of something. Pisces is peace, ultimately. So you can imagine Saturn and Mars can very well bring peace together, but fighting for it. Not peace that peace descends upon us from the divine spirit. No, no, no. Fighting for peace, for equilibrium, for anything that Pisces stands for is going to produce its effect, Saturn, ultimately. So it's not the easy peace, but it's the peace which will demand sacrifices. It will depend struggle, fight. And this energy is also like, let's speak out the truth. Let's speak out certain things that were never ever voiced. Pisces, they were felt, they were contemplated, thought about, but they were never ever voiced. So, and Mercury retrograde, conjunct Aries favors this so very much. Aries just drops the bomb, informational bomb, or something gets out to the public. So we can expect this part of the energy as well. And I really love the Sabian symbol of this 14, 15 degrees of Pisces, where it says the flow of inspiration. So this is absolutely wonderful. In both ways, on one hand, the flow of inspiration, Saturn limits it, blocks it even. Why? To purify it. This is when we judge if that inspiration is divine or anti-divine. Because you can imagine, even serial killers had inspiration. You know what I mean? Even for them, something from spirit entered their consciousness, or unconscious, better said, and inspired them. So Saturn, we distinguish if that inspiration is for our greater good or against our greater good. But Mars is where, if that inspiration is truly a divine gift, then we use it. Then we embrace it. Then we pick up its, let's say, arm, what it represents. A tool of something artistic, tool, a tool of healing, tool of forgiveness, tool of settling something karmic. Saturn, the time is now. Something which has to do either, for some people, even with previous lives. This is the moment when something settles, because you are given the choice. Mars, do you want to settle it now? But it can also be from this incarnation, the distant past, etc., etc. And the other element, the flow of inspiration, Mars, whenever we don't know what to do, we're lost. Let's say Aries. And why Aries? Well, when Aries has a deficit in it, Chiron, we feel totally lost. We don't know where to go. There might be a flow of inspiration that will give us what we need. Sometimes we don't need to know as such everything. Sometimes you just need to trust the instinct. Like, for example, when wild geese travel to a warmer place, warmer continent, you can imagine that their magic is the instinct that guides them. Now, this can be translated to more Uranian expression. Are they electromagnetically connected to the Earth's core or something like that? But it can also be translated in a Neptunian way. Spirit of the Earth, in a literal sense, guide them. Guides, it doesn't matter how we understand it. What matters is that it works. And we also have that instinctual impulse. We just feel what right and wrong is. So this is also very good energy for that. And at the same time, as I said, the moon is slowly and surely conjuncting Jupiter and Uranus. And I want to show you something. It is not just the physical moon. It is also white moon Selena. So basically, to understand it in a very quick and easy way, the opposite of black moon Lilith, the highest aspirations of the soul, stuff like that. So, these two lunar energies are going to be conjunct. And I find this so fascinating because this is a strong mystical energy. Moon in Taurus, the mysticism, the magic of nature, like real physical nature, the magic and every inspiration and knowledge and wisdom within it. Uranus, especially. Uranus is the higher knowledge. But then there is White Moon Selena, the human spirit, the most elevated and pure expression of because it has to be expression, because Taurus, let's embody it. That is wonderful, because the way I see this energy is as a pure desire, a pure aspiration, a pure wish, or a pure feeling, which is so pure, as I said, elevated, that it simply resonates with the heart of the divine. Saturn and Mars not having any other choice but to giving way to its manifestation ultimately. Then on the 12th, so let me put the screen back to normal. On the 12th, we have yet another very relevant, significant conjunction. So, as I said, this week is all about conjunctions, semi-sextiles, and semi-squares. Semi-square and semi-sextile is more like a psychological factor. So, I don't need to say that it's going to be uncomfortable, at least a part of this energy. But the conjunction is what really makes things happen. The conjunction is the motor, the heart of all. So Mercury retrograde conjunct the sun, a really, really good aspect for clarity, a really, really good aspect for also healing. They're so close to Chiron. We cannot take Chiron out of the equation. So for a lot of people, especially those for whom the eclipse has represented, besides other things, visits to doctor, hospital, surgery, certain health problems needed to be taken care of, especially eliminations, eliminating stones, eliminating any kind of stuff, uh, adenoms or cysts, anything like that. So this is a really good energy because it is clarity. You will know what you will have to do, or the doctor or whatever the situation is going to clarify, even if the proper time for action is somewhere later in the future, in a week, two, but at least the info, the clarity, the big picture is being shown a light on. So it's really, really good. But any other theme in your life for the Mercury retrograde is going to become crystal clear. Even if the potential solution or whatever is later on, you will at least have something to work with. Regardless what type of energy this plays out in your personal life, it may be, even, for example, romantic or emotional or sentimental. At least there is either communication or a certain kind of clarity, even if this energy is, for example, within your family. There are certain disputes in the family or choices need to be made and no one is on the same page. This energy may give a common ground, let's say. So we need to work with it. We really, really need to embrace it and work with it, even if a part of what becomes obvious, crystal clear, we might not find it to our liking. But at least the clarity is there. And again, for any type of healing energy or what we do with the wound is really, really good. And at the same time, but a bit later on, oh, I'm so sorry. This should be the 12th, actually, not the 11th. So whatever I said, it's actually goes for the 12th. This is when we have the Mercury Sun conjunction. And this is when Venus in the sign of Aries, not very comfortable here, meets Salasha. Salasha is a dwarf planet, Neptune's wife. She is the salt of the sea. She is basically the magic, the soul within the ocean of the sea, the feminine power, mermaid energy, all of the mystery of the ocean. Salasha can be seen as the messenger spirit of it. So with Venus, this is actually a beautiful energy. Salasha, just like her husband, is a bit of an illusion. It's not real, it's ethereal, but it can be very romantic. It can be very playful. Life can feel a little bit surreal. And amongst this heavy karmic energy, we need a lot of this playfulness or to understand life through the prism of, you know, higher emotion, if that makes sense. This is when, let me give you an example that happened to me very recently. You're in your thoughts, of course. How can you be anywhere else? Mercury retrograde in Aries, you need to figure stuff out. But suddenly, the scent of a blooming cherry tree, cherry blossom, and all of that interrupts you, and you look at it, and even the rays of the sun play with the petals, and there is like a light show there. It takes you out from 3D, and you can only understand what's happening in that moment is through elevated emotion. When you enter into either the world of arts or the world of the spirit, divine beauty, that which cannot be understood through ration, through logic, it can only be felt. That's Salasha. So even amongst the chaos, there is this divine seed of emotional enlightenment. And then, as you can see, Mars is picking up speed, and it is already it overcame Saturn in their race, so it's leading now. And let's move on to the 13th, where the key theme is that Black Moon Lilith is conjunct the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Sorry, it is trining. Black Moon Lilith is trining the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And this is a pretty unusual energy because Black Moon Lilith in Virgo, the truth in a raw, unapologetic, like hair splitting way. But it's a trine. So basically, the truth sets us free. I know that it's a trine, so it's a blessing, it's flowy. But this can in itself be quite eruptive, quite Uranian, quite challenging, rebellious in itself. This is when rebellion can take a very physical form. And this might be due to rebellion in the medical industry, Virgo, based on Jupiter, justice for things that have been going on, the COVID, and Taurus, how we manage, not we, as in doctors, the medical industry, governors, politicians, etc., how they managed the COVID situation from a medical but also financial Taurus perspective. And there is either truth there that will cause big unrest, or there is something there that will cause rebellion. But ignoring this can be a really good energy from a sensual, sexual perspective, because Taurus is the five senses, including any type of pleasure, let's say. Uranus, the sudden, the unexpected. Jupiter, expanding desire, expanding needs. And Black Moon Lilith, dishonesty. The moment of honesty to yourself that, for example, you have certain needs can be very magnetic, and it will instantly bring you to a certain kind of manifestation. There is that side of this energy. But there can be the reality of something, as I said, Black Moon Lilith and Virgo, sets you free, Uranus and Taurus. This is where maybe you understand the situation that you were a prisoner of. Let's see, it doesn't matter what kind of situation, because you either cling on to hope, or you just weren't ready to look at the reality of it. Something happens, you are confronted with the reality, and instead of saddening you and whatever, it comes as a massive blessing. Finally, you can accept it and move on easily, in a second, in a millisecond, a freedom. So there can be that. And on the 14th, this is where it is the sun which is conjunct Aries, planetoid Aries. So you can imagine, Aries is basically triggered and activated Mercury, then the Sun. So Aries doesn't have a moment of peace here. And also, Sun is powerful in Aries. It loves being here. And just like Mars, the Sun also combusts whatever it touches. Aries also combusts whatever it touches. So the negative expression of this, but even if it's negative, it's positive. For certain people, this says ego storm. But ego storm means they reveal themselves, especially in rate. I don't I don't want to make this sound in a really bad way, because it's ultimately not. I am not one of those people who suspect everyone from being fake. And is there such a thing? No, there is such a thing as choices. But the ego reveals itself for what it truly is, what it truly wants, where it really wants to take a situation, what it's truly about. Let's just generalize it like this. So that means that everyone else will see the ego in its true glory. And this can be simply an internalized energy. Your ego reveals itself and you look at it. Or this can be where everyone else has a glimpse to see the ego, or you see the ego of another person. And this is where I got you. This is the true you, not the soul, but you know what I mean. So, on this day, let's pay close attention to whatever happens in our social circles, because people are definitely going to reveal themselves for what they truly are. And this can be also in the most positive sense. For example, a secret admirer cannot hold it in anymore, or they make a mistake, Mercury retrograde in the same sign, they reveal themselves. Or someone has really, really benevolent emotions or feelings or desires, not in a romantic sense, but they believe in you, but they could never express this because there is something about you which they know would contradict this. A moment comes and they dish it out, and you get surprised in a positive way. They support you. You get the warmth of another person's sun you never even expected. So this can be very, very positive. And in the sense of self-empowerment, it's absolutely amazing. Sovereignty, Aries and Aries, your rights, your everything that is about you, very, very self-centered energy. But with the I am wound, Mercury very close to Chiron, understanding the wound, for people who basically lack the willpower, even for basic self-expression, this is a saving grace. This is a much needed energy. So yeah, but it doesn't matter how all of this detail looks like, because at the end of the day, the eclipse is where it's gonna set the tone. You know what I mean? So we're gonna really, really feel the overwhelming power of it, at least this week. But as I said, later on in the following weeks is where we, especially with the clarity given to us by the Sun Mercury conjunction, then after the 24th of April, 24th, 25th of April, Mercury goes direct. So that's slowly and surely we turn everything that happens into power, into knowledge, into wisdom, into sense of direction and self-empowerment. And perhaps the big key theme is healing, or knowing what to do with the wound. So thank you everyone for listening. If you'd like to find out more about the total solar eclipse in Aries, I have a specially dedicated video to that. And with this being said, wishing everyone a really, really blessed week. Be safe and trust. Trust the love, trust the magic, trust the hope in your heart, which will give you power to see yourself through absolutely everything. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, bye for now.